Namaste and welcome to this Ask Me Anything section. And I'm doing this, recording this a few days early because I'm heading on holiday after this. So if you were going to put a question in later, just feel free to stick it underneath here as a comment under this video, and I'll get to it next month, at the end of next month. So let's get started with what's been sent in. Joanna says, Helen, you are such a love. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anastasia says, boundaries are only functional when they're based on unconditional love. It's actually so obvious, but we are so often taught the opposite because the world is so deeply unconscious. Absolutely agree. And most of us don't even know that we, at least initially, don't know the difference between conditional and unconditional love. Unconditional love is literally with no conditions. I love myself. I love you as you are, without anything needing to change for that to occur. And unconditional love, boundaries set from there always tend to be healthy and work for the benefit of all parties involved. Conditional love boundaries tend to backfire on us and end up being something that we can't, if I set a boundary for myself, a healthy boundary for myself with another being, I'm much less likely to be able to respect that and honor that within myself if I only love myself conditionally. And of course, that's where we all start from. But as we move to unconditional love, that really does make a difference, as you said here. So Farouk Khan says, why do some people have difficulty with Kundalini energy? It's something that is, there's a lot of myths about Kundalini, really, isn't there? And, it's often thought that the issue is with the energy itself, the energy that arises. There's a lot of energy liberated that has been tied up in believing thoughts. It costs us a lot of energy to believe that we're a separate being, to believe that we're not good enough. And we've been doing that for so long, we haven't realized how much it's cost us. And as we begin to let go of that, either in a sudden or a very gradual way, which is much more normal for it to happen gradually, this powerful energy can arise. And it's had many myths and misnomers about it, really. But as to why for some that's a smooth process, for others not so much, quite the opposite, in fact. I can only really speak to my general experience of it, of my own awakening and working with other people. And in general, if two things are happening, we'll struggle with this Kundalini unfoldment, this awakening energetically, because awakening comes with a mental and a heart component, but also a physical energy, an energetic component. So two things really to check if you're having difficulties with this. And the first is that you're not trying to awaken this energy. It's much more easier and beneficial and natural to realize what you are first and have this energy awaken as a result of that, which is really much more a natural progression. There's a lot of practices aimed around waking the energy up first. And for me, that wasn't so, I did try those for a long time, but it wasn't so helpful because this energy was trying to move. And then what was happening was there was all these blockages in the system from beliefs and resistance that it just couldn't move beyond, which brings me to my second area where we had difficulties. And that is, as this energy awakens, it's going to show us areas of our life where we're still believing in being a separate being, where we're still thinking like a someone, a person, and haven't really fully allowed the extent of what it means to be the one being, the undivided self, into our thought process. So we may still be thinking in terms of me and other. And when that happens, it kind of causes a blockage in the energy that's flowing up the system. Resistance, we might call it, doesn't feel good. So you can see, hopefully, that these two things are kind of intertwined. If I'm trying to make something happen and I'm not working with that process consciously, recognizing that I'm going to be asked to look at what this brings up for me, which is also the same as what awakening is going to bring up for me, because seeing that I'm not really separate or divided, and there aren't really many beings, is going to show me more clear where I'm still thinking in the old way of being as someone living life, moving towards awakening. So to the degree that we're allowing this Kundalini energy to unfold by itself in its own timing, and to the degree that we're working with what it shows us that we need to look at, we'll find it a smooth transition and a natural organic process rather than something manufactured that we've tried to stimulate artificially. And my experience was very much problematic when I was trying to awaken it artificially. When I switched to a very direct path where I began to see what I am, then the energy began to liberate on its own, and my body knew what to do with it, had an intelligence to know what to do with it. So I hope that's helpful in terms of why we have challenges with it. There's no need to be scared of it. There's a lot of things, if you Google Kundalini, that really aren't true. There's some things that are true, of course, like anything, but bear in mind that we only tend to hear the worst and remember the worst stories. Okay, Christina did a short summary of the questions that I did and the answers, the timestamps where I answered them. So thank you for that. That's very helpful. Pamela Rawlinson says, thanks, Helen, for your clear depictions of the unfolding sense of awakening as it happened in yourself. I struggle with swinging like a pendulum between sensing the self, capital S, clearly, and putting that into practice in my life as it seems at present. This causes great confusion and can bring on a feeling of hopelessness and the wish to give up. This is particularly evidenced when bodily pain, physical and emotional, comes up, and also family relationships, which you have covered today and was most helpful. Love to you and much appreciation for the sharing. So Pamela, it's really normal to have this kind of I'll have an inward period in my awakening where I'm really focused on seeing something deeper. And then for me, there was this period of applying that. It wasn't like I'd chosen that. It just seemed to sort of flip outwards, and suddenly something would happen in a relationship or in my body or in my finances or whatever. And my attention was drawn to look at that. It was only later I could stop feeling like I'd been distracted from the pathway and that I had been focused outwards to apply what I'd just seen. So this is very normal. And I want you to give yourself a break, because there are always going to be some areas of our life where it's more challenging to apply what we've seen than others. And that goes across the board. Every awakened being has had some areas where it's very easy. Oh yeah, I'm not a separate being. And then when I see that this issue clears up, my life unfolds smoothly. There's also some other areas of our lives where we have to see it and see it and see it again before we can somehow remember to apply this consistently. And I'm no different in that. It was the same for me. And if we can just understand that that is the process, some parts are easy, some take more repetition. I'm not going to say the word hard, but it just needs more repetition of the truth to override my old thoughts. So if I'm having challenge about, my thoughts about myself and this other being, this relationship in particular might be more problematic in terms of me remembering that I'm not separate to this other being. For no apparent reason, there are just those places in our life where it's more challenging. And physical pain, emotional pain, those are one of those areas for most of us. When we're in physical pain, it can be much more challenging than other parts of our life. So hopefully you can just give yourself a break with that and pat yourself on the back a little bit. There's times when you're going to feel like giving up, times where you're going to feel like you're going backwards. And all I can say is that you can't really go backwards. It can feel like you have when a lot of stuff is coming up. But hopefully these words are serving to reassure you that that is normal, very normal. I spent 95% of my own awakening feeling like I was going backwards. 1% of the time, maybe, and that's a very generous estimate, 1% feeling like I was actually getting somewhere. And the rest of the percentage just completely confused. But that doesn't mean it isn't actually unfolding. These feelings about giving up, etc., and confusion and all of that, and even that we're getting somewhere, coming from the mind, and the mind doesn't really know what's going on in awakening. It likes to think it does, but it doesn't. So it is happening. You are already the self, and you cannot fail because of that. If you had to become the self, the universal self, that would be different, wouldn't it? You might be able to fail at that, but you're only seeing what you already are. So you cannot fail at that. You're only seeing what's always been true also. So that can't be a difficult thing. It's just repetition, the repetition of it, seeing it again and again. And it just begins to override these tendencies to think in certain ways about ourselves. So Rona Marin says, fantastic, Helen, thank you. Glad it's helped. Laurie Carlson says, thank you, Helen, and thank you too. Arian Nira says, hi, Helen. Thank you for the love and light you spread. I have a question about broken relationships between mother and daughter. My daughter has broken our relationship 2 years ago. She refuses to tell me why and doesn't want to talk with me. Our relationship was always very close and loving until she left the house when she was 23 years old. Her partner is a dominant 16-year-older man than she is, who doesn't like family very much, particularly mothers, because of a troubled childhood. My daughter's personality changed dramatically over the years, and the distance between us became wider and wider, until it felt like we both spoke different languages. I couldn't reach her anymore. As you can understand, this situation was life-changing for me, and it made me go deeper and deeper into who I really am. The grief and the feeling of losing a child, not to death, but to broken contact, and not understanding why, brought me closer over the years. Many profound, liberating insights in my own rejections, indignation, wanting to warn and rescue, and many other emotional responses. All this brought me deeper to awakening and eventually acceptance and a deep, beautiful peace. This grief is gone now, and I know my daughter lives her choices. I know and feel our true nature is the same, which makes my heart feel so joyful and free. My love for her will always be there. Sometimes the word why is coming up inside me, and I know it is the mind who wants to know, and I withdraw my attention from it. Is she a mirror? Is she reflecting part of my inner? It's another question I've asked myself also. The answer was, yes, sometimes I feel that I haven't seen the whole mirror she reflects to me yet. My question is, I'm not the only mother who's gone through this. Can you shine your light on this theme? Broken relationships between parents and adult children, in my case, between my mother and daughter. I feel this question and your words will help many parents who experience this in these days. Thank you so much. Love and light. Much love and light. It's really, really very common. Went through something very similar myself, and as you said, it does drive you deeper in your awakening. And I think the thing that came out of it from sharing it with other people eventually, for me, was that it's very much more common than we might feel. And that just because people aren't talking about it doesn't mean it's not happening more and more often. And as our children grow up, they're going to want to move beyond seeking our approval, perhaps as parents, and move to seeking the approval of a partner or work colleagues or someone their own generation, their own age. And that's a phase that goes on for however long it goes on for, until perhaps your daughter decides that our own opinion about you and our own opinion about herself is more important than anybody else's, her partners and yourself, so that her own opinions of herself are most important and we're not seeking any external reference points for how we think and feel about things. We're relying only on our own intuitive wisdom. And it doesn't mean we're closed to other people's opinions, but we're not taking them somewhat absolute. And that can be a very challenging process to go through as a parent, make you question everything about your parenting, as it did for me. And it made me go through my own parenting with a fine-tooth comb and really look at, am I doing a good enough job? Am I able to accept the way the situation is? And of course, it drove me deeper. And if you can look at that as you've said you've done a lot of introspection on this, which is, of course, very good. Come to the conclusion that you weren't at fault, and neither is she, and neither is her partner. It's just our tendency to want to believe thoughts showing up here in your daughter, and the fact that I'm assuming she still thinks she's a separate being, and so feels in need of approval and recognition from others, and is looking for it from wherever is easiest to get it from at that particular point. And at that particular point, it would be her partner, probably. So recognizing your love, a deep unconditional love for your daughter, and then also for yourself in this process, that you haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing going wrong here, as you pointed to in your words. The why of it, of course, mind wants to know, as you've said. The why of it, we could really say, if we can find an answer, is maybe just perhaps the differing ways that your daughter is identifying with her thoughts. She's now moved to identifying perhaps with thoughts that her partner is thinking more than her own judgment of things herself. And that isn't anything going wrong. That's just the experiences that she needs to have to get her to the point where she doesn't want to believe any thoughts at all moving forward. So hopefully that helps. I mean, it's one of those things that can be quite painful as a parent, but it is so much more common than we're led to believe. Any two human beings that have any close relationship are going to disagree at some point about something. And that doesn't change just because it's parent and child and your child has grown up into something, some adult. Sometimes it gets even more intense there. But nonetheless, you can come to peace over this, as you said yourself. And knowing that she's taking her own journey, as you've said, and she'll come back to clarity when she's ready. And she can do that while she's still with this partner, or she might not stay with this person, who knows. But whatever she's going through is for her greatest good, just as you've used this thoroughly for your own spiritual awakening and growth. For me, the thing that made it persist longer, that I would suggest looking at, is the idea that this is happening only to you, meaning you're the only parent that's having this kind of challenge, and you've raised that point. It can't only be me. When I started to talk to people about this, it was like there was some stigma inside me that I shouldn't be failing as a parent or something. And what I came to see is that every parent starts off feeling like a failure at some point and has to transcend that. So here you are already doing that, and that's pretty amazing, pretty profound in that. So thank you for sharing, and I hope that helps. Linda Yamin says, thank you, Helen, again for all your clear guidance and teachings. I have a question about history. Knowing ourselves as awareness, why would history seem important to know and study? Why would we need to memorize the presidents of the US or the generals in the wars? What would be the point to develop curriculum for schools learning about the past? Would it just be something like fascination with an interesting book or movie with lots of plot twists? Thank you for your insights. Well, I guess for me, how I would see it is that learning specific dates and people's names may be not so important in terms of an awakened society, but maybe studying history so that we can learn the challenges that we've been through as a species and how we've overcome those major turning points. If we look at anything that's happened on a global scale, we've learned lessons from it. We've learned how to be kinder to each other, and we're struggling to apply those lessons that we've learned from these things. So maybe just like you would watch a movie and with some good plot twists and all that, you would see if there's a moral or a story, a lesson in that. Maybe we could do that with our history. For me, it never really seemed to make sense to be examined, tested on learning dates and when did this thing happen? Okay, this thing happened. What did we learn from it? Might be a better question. Just my opinion. History has a lot to teach us if we are open to see, and we can learn from people who've gone before us, their challenges, their errors in judgment, their thought process, and not make the same mistakes again, and move forward, hopefully more consciously as a species on this planet. That would be my ideal way to view history. Again, not the most popular opinion, but there it is. And Tisashi Soul says, thank you so much, Helen. Your answer really helped me a lot. Good, glad. And, if you're struggling with it still, let me know and we can go forward from there. Nadia S says, hi, dear Helen. Thank you very much for answering our questions. My question for this month is about frustration. I am, since years, decades even, really frustrated from not being able to do or have what I want. I cannot change my job, flat, city, boyfriend, etc. It is, of course, not a permanent feeling. And from time to time, I get some sense of satisfaction, sometimes quite a lot of it, but then it comes back again and again. I understand from your teaching that it's a result of perceiving me as a separate being instead of omnipresent, but this does not help me. Am I supposed to first get fully enlightened to have what I want? I did the exercises in your book about abundance, and in general, I enjoy listening to you talking about desires. It fills me with hope. But I still feel stuck and really fear I'm going to end up in a sheer bitterness of unrealized life. P.S. I've just realized that most of my desires contain a lot of contradiction in them. I want them for some reason, but also do not want them for other reasons. How to resolve the conflict? Thanks. So this is really, really normal. I wanted a lot of things, and I also had this, I also don't want them because, so I want abundance financially, but I don't want that because I will overspend or fritter it away because I feel I'm not good enough. And that had been my pattern over and over again. So just looking at these, I want this thing and then I don't want it. Looking at why don't I want it, and is that true? I might have had experiences in the past, but can I examine it now? Is it really true I'm going to mess this up if I get the thing I've asked for? Is it really true I'm going to mess it up, or that I don't deserve it? And moving forward from there. So I'm really looking at the reasons why you don't want something, because the don't want is counteracting the do want and holding it the status quo in a sort of place where it can't move forward and show up in your life. Also, you said here you get some satisfaction, but mostly you're not feeling good overall. To me, that's key, because what we want, if what we want is going to make us feel better, it's going to agree with. So if I'm generally feeling quite good and satisfied and content and peaceful, then what I want can come because it's going to reflect that. Our inner world is reflecting as our outer world. So how I'm thinking and feeling most of the time is showing up as my experiences. So if I'm not feeling good enough inside, I'm not feeling happy, I'm not feeling content or peaceful, then it's going to be very hard for me to get something that I've always wanted, because what I've always wanted is a better job, a different partner, a different flat, etc. It's going to agree with my joy. So if I'm not feeling joy already, how is that going to come? So if I were you, I would really look at why you don't feel satisfied now. And for most of us, it's this idea that I can only feel how I want to feel when my outer world changes first. So when I change my job, my flat, my partner, whatever it is that we want, then I'll feel the way I want to feel. And it never works that way around, ever, not once. It always works the other way. When I feel the way I want to feel first, then life can give me the experiences, the people, and the events that are going to agree with that feeling. It never works the other way. So where are you in your life looking to feel better from having something happen in your relationships, in your career, etc.? Can you have it happen that way? Has it ever happened that way, really? No. But mine still holds on to this idea. When I get what I want, then I'll feel better. And the self, capital S, says, actually, when I feel the better, then I'll get what I want as a reflection. My outer world is a reflection of my inner thoughts and feelings. So has to be that way around. So how good can you feel right now? And can you keep working on feeling better? And of course, the fastest way to feel better is to realize that you're not actually this separate being, that you're not this person that you've taken yourself to be. And then you can come out of this stuck loop that you're in. So you don't have to be fully enlightened to get what you want. Just deem to begin to feel a little bit better incrementally. So some self-inquiry, some meditation, coming to see that you're not at all what you think you are. And this will begin to shift everything for you. And I'm not saying that you're not doing that already, but doing that, this spiritual practice from the understanding that it's never going to work the way mind says it's going to work. It's not that I'm going to feel better when I get a bigger flat or a house or something like that. That house is trying to come, that place that I want to live, but it can only come when I feel good inside, when I'm feeling some positive emotion most of the time. We all have our ups and downs, but it has to be that way around. And if you look at the things that you want that are not coming, it would be because that's flipped on its head. I'll feel better when. I'll feel better if. I'll feel satisfied when. And it needs to be the other way around. I'm going to do my best to feel as good as I can now. Because it's not those things coming into our life that makes us feel better anyway. It's that when they come in for a short while, we stop beating ourselves up inside so we feel better anyway. And then that falls away and we begin to feel bad again. And around we go once more. So have a ponder on that and let's see where you get with it. SK says, hi Helen, love your attentionless state meditation. I'm able to put my attention on the empty space around an object or sound. When it comes to thoughts, not so much. I struggle with letting the thoughts be there and practice opening my attention outwards. I think I may have some mental block when it comes to thoughts. Any help you can give is appreciated. Thank you. And so for me, it was the same as well. I could notice the space around this laptop, this iPad. I've got these comments on my body. But then when it came to thoughts, it was more challenging because I couldn't see it with my physical eyes. So it might be that it helps to switch. Maybe that you can notice the space around things and external objects, physical, tangible things. But maybe when it comes to thoughts, you can just notice that you're aware of them. You're aware of them, and that's why there's the noumenon there, the awareness of them. Or can you notice the thoughts moving through the stillness? There's a whole range of ways in the list of guided meditations, noticing stillness, silence, awareness, consciousness. You're conscious of these thoughts. So there's the consciousness, presence, beingness, existence, sense of existence. Notice these thoughts are always happening in the now moment. You can't have a thought yesterday. Can't have it tomorrow. See if you can find a different way in with thoughts, just to come back to the ever-present self, noumenon. I've called it all these names: awareness, consciousness, noumenon, self. It's silence, but it is the same thing. And sometimes with thoughts, a different kind of name for it helps us connect easier. If it helps also, you can imagine your thought as a physical thing. Here's a thought, and it feels a very subtle thing. Still a thing, it's still subtle. It's not like a table that you could knock your hand against, but it's not, nonetheless a thing that's there. I suggest playing around with different ways. For me, there was a different way to recognize this when I was looking at external objects, physical things that I could see with my senses, perceive with my senses. And a different way worked when I was looking at thoughts. So the silence, the stillness very much worked for me to recognize the coming and going of thoughts. And then the contextual feel of the space really helped with external objects. And eventually it's all the same, but it's about finding the right doorway in for you. So have a play around. On the YouTube channel, there is a playlist where I've read my books and read them and recorded. There is a Dissolving the Ego one, and in that there's a list of all the different doorways. We've called them different names for the self, because it's all the same, but different words sometimes really helps us find a way in. It's very normal what you've described. So it is a frustrating stage, but nonetheless normal. So it's not anything you're doing wrong. It's just that thoughts are more subtle objects, aren't they? So sometimes a different way helps. Again, if you have any challenges with it, let me know. Okay. Rosie Mary De Silva says, "Hi, Helen. Is it right to say that the me is a thought?" Yeah, absolutely. It's an idea. There's an idea of a separate self. And that's why when we actually look in self-inquiry, we can't actually find this separate me, this self that seems to be running our life, this person, this separate being that's moving towards awakening, this separate being, this me that's transcending its karmic patterns. It's really just a thought, an idea that there is such a thing that exists. And yet it only is a thought, as you said here. But that thought is given so much validity that for perhaps thousands of years, different bodies have come and gone. And this me idea has experienced itself through these different bodies over and over again. And after such a long time, finally, comes the urge to question this idea, this thought, that I am a separate being. Or we could say that the me is just simply a bunch of thoughts and emotions and assumptions. But it stems all from this original thought. It's just a thought. When we actually look, we can't find it at all. It seems to be here still, but it actually doesn't exist in reality. So this thought, that's crazy. When I first understood this, it's just a thought, and yet it's been given so much validity and credence by me that I've experienced it as extraordinarily real for such a long time. And it was like, whoa, how much power I have to kind of hold this illusion over myself. And that the moment I start to look for it, all I find is a body and thoughts and sense perception and emotions. I can't find anyone to whom they're happening. Very bizarre. But nonetheless, you are correct. Yes, it's just a thought, or it seems to be a thought given a lot of belief really appears as very real in our lives. And of course, while we believe it's real, it seems that way, and we don't even think to question. So very precise and profound insight there that you had. Hope that helps. Okay, last but not least is Christina. "Dear Helen, your teachings will allow us to step out of suffering. Will oneness turn an enemy into a friend? Seeing the other as yourself, will it work with any enemy? Because there are some really evil forces at play on the earth. Will all that start to correct itself when we work on our inner state? And is it not important to do anything other than what we are inspired to do? Thanks so much." So seeing an enemy as yourself, the reason we think they're an enemy is because of our thoughts about them. And as we begin to change our thoughts about them, We might not see them as an enemy anyway. We might see them as a friend, a very lost in their thoughts friend. Just because we see them as a friend doesn't mean we want to necessarily be around them. Someone who is exhibiting some very low forms of behavior, destructive towards themselves or others, might not be someone I would choose to spend time around, especially someone destructive to others, aggressive to others. But it doesn't mean I don't love them or accept them or understand them and love them unconditionally. They are very lost in their own thoughts about the world and themselves and others, and are caught in this nightmare cycle of living out these thoughts, experiencing them over and over with no end in sight. So, yes, as we begin to work on seeing ourselves clearly, we begin to see there are no others, and that begins to change all of humanity. And it's not when we start to do that, it's already occurring, hence this question you brought forth. It's already happening. And if just a small percentage of us reach that understanding, then the rest of humanity will begin to change very quickly to a place where any violence in thought, word, or deed becomes a memory only. And it's not an impossibility at all. It's much more reachable than our mind might have us believe, at least. It might not be that person would ever turn around and, okay, can I hug you now? I really like you. I thought you were my enemy. But what the effect of love and acceptance and understanding in here will do is to override these forces and nullify their effect. We can only be at the effect of something that we feel is separate to us. And as I begin to see here that I'm not separate to anything, and that there are no other beings, and that I'm not at the effect of anything, that everything is happening inside me, then my realization is simultaneously happening everywhere, affecting everyone. And it doesn't matter wherever each body, mind, vehicle is, it's realizing this. It's sending out this realization instantaneously. Sending out implies time and space, but it's instantaneously realized everywhere. I might be using a body and mind to ask the question, who am I, what am I, and to self-inquire. But the fruit of that inquiry is universal. So it makes it that much harder for that person to do that aggressive, violent, angry thing when we self-inquire. The more of us that are doing that and seeing the truth, the easier it is for all of us to rise. Everyone is lifted up in this ocean of love, loving acceptance and understanding. Unconditional love and acceptance, seeing an enemy as your own self, doesn't mean you agree with those behaviors or would want to replicate them. You might still disagree with them quite strongly, but you understand where they're coming from and you choose something different for yourself and for as species-wide moving forward. So, yeah, you can do exactly what you're inspired to do. Do what your body has to do. There'll be certain things you have to do, day-to-day stuff. The body will get on and do that. It'll get done. And then whatever you're inspired to do also will be such a joy, such a joy. And it will be some way that we are moving the species forward as a whole. Whatever we love to do is a way of service too for ourselves and others. And it's going to bring about a change anyway, because anything that we're doing in joy is going to be infectious to other people. Joy is the most infectious thing. Love and peace, of course. And wouldn't it be great if this tidal wave of love and peace and acceptance and joy that's happening sped up and began to ripple across the whole planet, even faster than it is now? It's already happening. Don't be fooled about that. Don't listen to your mind about that. If you only watch what's happening in the media, you'll see a very different story, but that is a very limited window of what's happening. The fact that you're asking this right now is evidence of that. So have at it, and try to remember, if you can, that your self-realization is self with a capital S. It's not just happening in one place. Your epiphanies, your understandings are shaking the very foundations of everyone's mind and suffering, potential to suffer. So that's huge when you get that, really huge, and just really highlights for us the importance of what we're doing here and the priority with which we could give it. So I hope that helps, Christina. And that brings us to an end for this month's Ask Me Anything. So if you have anything you want me to address, I will get to it at the end of August now. You can feel free to leave a comment under here, a question or a sharing or something that you're challenged with, and I'll go through them at the end of the month as we've been doing. I hope you're enjoying doing these, listening to these as much as I am. There's always a diverse range of questions that come in. It's interesting. And I hope you have a wonderful end of month, and until I see you again. Thank you. Namaste.